following breaking news tonight out of Virginia. NBC News has obtained a disturbing photo from Democratic Governor Ralph Northam's 1984 medical school yearbook page. The image shows a man made up in blackface next to another person dressed in a Ku Klux Klan robe. The Virginia governor released a statement tonight confirming it's him in the photo. He apologized for what he acknowledges is clearly racist and offensive. Quote, "This behavior is not in keeping with who I am today and the values I have fought for throughout my career in the military, in medicine, and in public service. But I want to be clear, I understand how this decision shakes Virginians' faith in that commitment." The latest blackface scandal comes a week after the Republican Secretary of State down in Florida, Michael Erdahl, resigned after photos emerged of him posing as a Hurricane Katrina victim made up in blackface. Those photos were for a private Halloween party 14 years ago. 2 months after Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans, a city that is 60% African-American. I'm joined by Michael Eric Dyson, of course, author of What Truth Sounds Like, Robert F. Kennedy, James Baldwin, and our unfinished conversation about race in America. Also with us, Adrian Eldred, former senior advisor to Hillary Clinton. Professor, thank you so much, Professor Dyson.
Yes, sir.
The history of blackface and its offensiveness, and here we go again. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. And it's bipartisan, obviously. This is something that, and the astonishing thing is, this is 1984, not 64, not even 74. This is 1984. And it's a remarkable display of the fact that racial insensitivity is not the particular province of any particular party, though we know that disproportionately within conservative circles, this kind of thing passes muster. But the reality is that even among conservative Democrats or those blue dog Democrats or those in the South who think that this is a joke or ha-ha and play it for laughs, understand later that this is something destructive and provocative. And I'm glad he apologized. I'm glad he acknowledged that it's offensive. I'm glad he acknowledged that it has to go through a process where people can grieve and be astonished and say, no, God, not again. Megyn Kelly wonders why blackface is a problem. The gentleman last week you talked about who had to resign, and now the governor of Virginia. This is a consistency that has to be addressed and is so deeply rooted in our culture. I end by saying this. For those who say, hey, aren't we past this? Mostly racism is gone. The impediments and obstacles that prevent black people and others from flourishing are far since removed. You people keep harping on this. This is an index of the persistence of racism in our country.
You know, I think, everybody knows I'm a movie buff, and I was watching some old YouTube today of Al Jolson back. You know, he was the guy that first talking movie, the jazz singer, in blackface. Right. And I was thinking, watching on YouTube tonight, I was thinking, what did the African Americans who were in the crew, were they working there or watching in the theater or back in the theater in those days? What were they thinking as this guy playing a blackface character out of the minstrels in the 20s and 30s and 40s? And and then I watched an Alfred Hitchcock movie the other night. There are no black people in it except the Pullman car conductors. There's nobody in the street of New York when they have a picture of Fifth Avenue. No black people at all. No African Americans. And what was the reaction of people at that time? Project back. What were people thinking, African Americans?
Well, it was astonishing. I mean, black people had to pretend in public that they could be amenable to such displays of flagrant and offensive racism. But look, think about it. It's just like when Joe Louis was in the ring boxing and he was beating a white figure. You know, when they're in front of white people, oh my God, how sad. But inside they're cheering, and when they went home, they hurrayed. The reality is black people have always had to accommodate the vicious expression, the lethal intensity of racial passions that are against us, and then keep navigating our way through it. We had to suck it up. We had to bite our tongues. Inside, we thought it was horrible. We fought against it. We talked about it within our circles, our sororities and fraternities and churches. We did that. But we stood up and we said to ourselves, this does not mark who we are. And yet at the same time, the dominant culture is obsessed with black skin, but not black skill, not black talent, wants to be black in terms of look, but not black people in terms of reality. That's part of the trauma that we see in blackface. And that's why its persistence is especially hurtful to those of us who think, look, we're beyond this. We got to get past this. What is the obsession with white America about blackening their faces, but not blackening their circumstances or conditions?
Adrian, we had you on before we know what you're going to say today. And earlier this evening, actually this afternoon, you called for this governor, Northam, to quit, to resign over this.
I did, absolutely. I mean, first of all, even if he is acknowledging that what he did was wrong, and this happened in 1984, I mean, you cannot undo this. He's never going to be forgiven by the majority of his voters.
That's not a million years ago, by the way.
Correct. Exactly. That's the point, Chris. It's not a million years ago. But secondly, here's what is a campaign operative. I don't understand how this information just now came out. Why didn't we see this during the primary? Why didn't we see this in the general election? Who was doing the opposition research for the opponents of
They weren't
Ralph
doing
Northam?
a good job.
They weren't doing a good job.
I don't want to make comic of this, but there is a political aspect of why doesn't this stuff get out? It's usually an opposition organization that gets it out, and probably
Correct.
was this time. But I'm going to ask you about Julian Castro, who was just on the show the other night. He's also called for him to leave.
Yeah, look, I think you're going
quit.
to see more and more calls by prominent Democrats and Democrats across the party calling on Mr. Northam to step down. I think it's going to be very hard for him to recover from this. And look, Justin Fairfax, Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, is a rising star in the Democratic Party. He himself is African American. It's not like there's not a long lineage of talent to replace Governor Northam, too. So,
Are you speaking as, I'm going to ask you a question here, not just as a commentator. Are you speaking as a Democrat who thinks the Democrats have to keep their laundry clean, too? That
they do. Yeah, no, absolutely. The Democrats have to keep their laundry clean, too. But at the same time, if we're going to criticize Republicans for, these insensitive racial gestures, then we need to also call out our own in our party. And I think that, again, Governor Northam is going to have a very difficult time recovering from this. And, he's also a one-term governor. You can't forget. In Virginia, you don't run for re-election.
I want to switch to the positive now. You're a Democrat. I'll start with you and then get to the professor. We have two African-American candidates that are really going to be serious contenders. This isn't like an outside chance here. I mean, Kamala Harris says, even Donald Trump said, the best rollout he's ever seen, basically, this year. And you've got Cory Booker tonight, the senator from New Jersey, who's always looked like a winner politically. This is a real development. Just one presidency after Barack Obama broke the color bar, basically.
Exactly. And, when Barack Obama was running in 2008, he obviously embraced being African-American, but there were some consultants who said you should sort of distance yourself from that. Now we've got two prominent African-Americans running in this primary, which is wonderful to see. But it's going to be interesting to see how the two of them adjust their message to compete with certain sectors within the African-American community.
Let me go to Michael now. Has there been a zeitgeist change on this question of a black president, to be blunt, to put it that way, since 08?
Well, there's no doubt that Barack Obama broke the barrier. He was Jackie Robinson. We just celebrated, the 100th anniversary birthday of Jackie yesterday. So Barack Obama is Jackie Robinson. He isn't the first black person who was capable of being president. He's the first black person who got a chance to prove that he could do it. Jackie Robinson wasn't the best black ball player and wasn't the only one who could have been the first ball player, but he had the right temperament. As the great philosopher Grace Jones said, I may not be perfect, but I'm perfect for you. He was perfect for the situation. Barack Obama was too. Now we see the rising competition of two extraordinary stars. These are intergalactic stars, politically speaking. Cory Booker with his storied history and Kamala Harris with her superstar status. Her rollout, 20,000 people in Oakland, and then doing a great job on a competing network, having a town hall, and then being able to withstand some of the critique around her record as prosecutor and the like. So Attorney General. So the reality is that both of these figures will show that you can have more than one black person. And that welcome to the world of black politics, like white politics. We have many white politicians, many black politicians. May the best man or woman win. May the best figure rise and take the challenge. And I think that Cory and Kamala, Senator Booker and Senator Harris will show that in our own time.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.